everybody. I'm very pleased to be here today to share with you some industry insights from QuoCirca, discussing what we believe are the trends for the coming year and the impact of COVID-19 on the office print industry. So this presentation will be in three main sections. I'll be discussing some of the trends we saw prior to COVID and really looking at those because I want to discuss how these trends are all accelerating and having, quite a strong impact on the requirements of businesses today. I'll then look at the impact of COVID-19 very briefly in terms of what impact that's had on the industry, both from an end user perspective and channel perspective. And then we'll go on to discuss how we believe the hybrid workplace will be created as a result of these trends I'll be discussing prior. So moving on to the next slide. So firstly, I'll be discussing the pre-COVID workplace. I'll be discussing 6 key trends that we were already seeing prior to COVID. Next slide. So the first trend we were seeing is the shift to the less paper office. So I think it's pretty well acknowledged that print volumes in the office were already flat to declining before COVID-19, and there was already quite a significant impact on printing in the workplace. We conducted a study called Print 2025. We published the second edition of that in November 2019. And it was amongst IT decision makers and office workers. And we really wanted to understand the difference in opinions and perceptions between IT decision makers and office workers in terms of their perception of print and digital technologies in the workplace. We can see from this slide that by 2025, 65% of IT decision makers expected print to be important. And this compared to just 36% of office workers. So the reason I really want to highlight this is because there's quite a significant disconnect in the perception of print and its importance to the business between IT decision makers and office workers. And the reason that this is very relevant is that these office workers, particularly in the US and Europe, are now all working from home, and their expectation of print will have a significant impact as we go beyond the lockdown measures, as those become relaxed and people return to the office. So potentially this could have strong repercussions for the use of print in the office environment. And I've got some more information later on how we see that playing out. But this was a trend we were already seeing, was this gradual transition to a less paper office, but we don't expect print will ever disappear. It's very much an evolution of how print is being used in the office environment. So the next slide discusses digitisation initiatives. So this is really the flip side of printing. Clearly many organisations are already starting their digital transformation initiatives well before COVID, and we expect this to accelerate further. Very much COVID-19 has been a catalyst for digital transformation. And, prior to COVID, we were already seeing that 25% overall of organisations believed that digitisation of their paper-based processes was very important to their business. So not a huge percentage, but by 2025, almost 50% believe that would be the case. And as I say, this was prior to COVID, and we believe this is going to be much higher now, given the fact that many organisations had to rapidly move to remote working and therefore digital technologies. The next key trend, which really deserves a presentation in itself, but I'm just going to really highlight some of the findings, is around cloud. So absolutely, cloud initiatives were already accelerating prior to COVID, and this again been a huge catalyst for remote working over the last 6-7 months. We were already seeing cloud being widely used for IT infrastructure consumption, so in terms of technology consumption, but print was really pretty much an afterthought when it comes to cloud printing or printing in the cloud. However, in our Print 2025 study, almost 3/4 of organisations said that they expect to increase their use of cloud-based print management by 2025. So we do believe this is a key enabler for prints going forward. So actually all the trends I'm discussing are all going to be enabled by cloud in some shape or form. And actually the print management aspect is just one aspect of how cloud could actually be a real enabler for digital transformation and help organisations not only reduce their financial costs, because often with a cloud-based print infrastructure, you're moving print service to the cloud, so that reduces IT burden, reduces the cost of provisioning and managing a print server. We estimate that's about $3,000 per year to provision, and then a further $4,000 per year to actually maintain. So there's huge costs involved in terms of managing these on-premise print servers. So moving to those clouds reduces costs, and it also reduces energy usage because that's all managed in a cloud. So if anyone needs any information on that, we've got other reports on the cloud, but I just wanted to highlight that as one of the key trends that we were already seeing, and again is accelerating as a result of COVID. So the next slide, sustainability. So we were seeing that this was re-emerging as a key focus. Overall, 83% expected sustainability to be important to their business by 2025, and 57% expect a supplier to adopt a leading position for sustainability by 2025. So sustainability was gradually moving higher on the agenda, on the corporate agenda. And, particularly with COVID-19 now, sustainability issues are, coming more to the fore. Organisations are realising that, remote working is helping them actually reduce their environmental impact. And, absolutely print, as we would all, pretty much acknowledge, does have a significant impact on carbon emissions or the environmental footprint of any organisation if they are printing wastefully. So what we did see in this study was 52% of organisations were reporting that reducing environmental impact was their top print management challenge above cost reduction. So it was the first time it had actually elevated its position to number one, and we expect that's going to be the case going forward when we run the study again in January 2021. But really, cost is always an issue with print, but actually the environmental impact, the cost of consumables and supplies, the running costs of operating a printer all has, a huge impact, which again is why cloud can really help businesses reduce their sustainability or increase their sustainability credentials by moving print servers and their infrastructure into the cloud. So on the next slide, we see that security is also high on the agenda. So we asked the respondents which of the following do they think they should be investing more to increase their relevance in the digital workplace by 2025. And you can see there, security is number one. And it's pretty much the same between IT decision makers and office workers. Paper to digital workflow integration solutions, number two. And you can see further along, cloud printing, 50% versus 33% of office workers. Energy monitoring further down, 41%. So you can see these are all the kind of areas where they believe print vendors really need to invest more to increase their relevance, because I'll go on to discuss later that the print industry was already in the throes of digital disruption, and actually it needs to move beyond the hardware and the speeds and feeds to develop these value-added solutions and services. So security is where that's really an opportunity for print vendors and their partners to really help their customers reduce their security risks. And again, this has become more of an issue because of the remote working acceleration, and also the fact that that has in turn increased the threat landscape, which means that potentially more people working from home, potentially using printers in the house, in their home offices, and often these home printers aren't as secure or as well monitored as printers in the office environment. So there's lots of areas around security which we've got various reports on, but it's really one of the key trends we were already seeing prior to COVID, and again we see that as a huge opportunity for the industry to capitalise on going forward. The final trend we were seeing prior to COVID, and again will be reinforced as a result of the pandemic, is that IT-centric expertise will set leaders apart from followers. So we asked organisations who they have the deepest relationship with regarding print today. So we ran this report in 2019, and who do they expect that to be with in 2025? So you can see that when we run the study, in the last couple of years, almost just over a quarter say that they've got the strongest relationship with print manufacturers. But by 2025, only 15% say that will be the case. And you can see with the green bar increasing, it's in favour of IT service providers that may be offering MPS, but they also have other skills and capabilities beyond print. So, for example, security services, managed IT services. You can see MPS providers slightly increasing, pretty much flat, but what we see is that there's a bit of overlap between the MPS providers and print manufacturers. And actually where we do see a significant increase is with the independent software vendors. So we are seeing that ISVs are becoming more influential, and one of the main reasons is in the print industry, it's very much dominated by a few large legacy companies, and they're typically the oil tankers of the industry, if we want to draw a metaphor between oil tankers and speedboats. And I would say the speedboats are the more innovative companies like the ISVs, maybe the IT service providers, who are able to react maybe much faster to market changes, and they also have the ability to develop software capabilities that are much more innovative perhaps than the print manufacturers. And that's not to say there's not innovation in some of the big print manufacturers, because absolutely they're very innovative in terms of products and technology. But sometimes when it comes to business models and even business culture, they can be stifled by corporate inertia. And this is where ISVs can actually support print manufacturers, because they often have the cloud platforms, the security capabilities, and the software expertise to help print manufacturers build their relevance. So I just really wanted to focus on that slide, just to really show how we're seeing print manufacturers slightly losing their relevance in favour of the more IT-centric companies. So on the next slide, the next section, I'll be going into the impact of COVID-19. We've published quite a few reports on this. So if anyone's interested, they're all on quocirca.com. So I'll just really highlight some of the key findings we saw. We conducted a survey amongst about 300 industry respondents. So they were, the majority were channel partners, and this was across the globe, so the US, Europe, and Asia Pacific. And we asked them what the impact of COVID-19 was on their business and where they saw the opportunities. We ran 3 studies, and the final one was published in May of this year. So I just want to highlight some of the highlights from the third survey. So we are seeing that, unsurprisingly, it has had a severe impact on businesses, particularly in Europe and the US. So 8% reported that it had a critical impact resulting in business closure. 51% said it had a significant negative impact. Overall, 38% said that revenue for 2020 will decrease by more than 20%. But we have published some more recent research which shows that although most agree that revenue will be down this year, there is optimism for 2021, where print volumes are expected to bounce back as lockdown measures relax and offices start to reopen over here in Europe and the US. Overall, 16% had made staff redundancies and 16% had furloughed some or all of their staff. So particularly in Europe, we're seeing a huge impact with the furlough scheme, and now this is, although this has just been extended in the UK, there have been quite a substantial number of redundancies as a result of that furlough scheme ending. So it's still really not possible to say the exact impact in terms of employees, but at the stage we ran this study, around 16% had made staff redundancies. Overall, 70% encouragingly say the crisis presents an opportunity for innovation. And I think this is really, as I say, encouraging and positive news for the industry. Although the industry has been severely impacted, obviously the print volumes have been declining because offices have been shut. But there is optimism, as I say, and particularly some of the more progressive providers in the industry, the MPS providers, the channel partners and the OEMs and ISVs, do believe that, I think as with any crisis, there's an opportunity to reinvent and reimagine their businesses and, look at how they can actually change their business models. And, the fact that 70% believe this is an opportunity is very positive. I just really wanted to touch on some of the comments we received from OEMs and channel partners. And, although things may start, improving gradually, I think a lot of these comments are very relevant to the industry, regardless of whether we have, had a pandemic or not. Absolutely, there was a feeling that print was becoming less relevant to the business. The acceleration of, business process automation, digital workflow integration, and so on was already happening. And there was a sense that, the managed print services sector was already suffering some damage to service revenue, but this would be potentially worsened as a result of COVID-19 because of the decline in office working. And, I think there'll be, maybe other discussions on this subject, but remote working is absolutely here to stay. There was already remote working happening across Europe and the US prior to COVID-19. And, the new normal, if there is such a thing, will, certainly be a hybrid, with most people, potentially still working remotely to some extent, with maybe a couple of days in the office. And, this obviously has a huge impact on office printing and, MPS. One comment that I really wanted to highlight was around the solutions around digital workflows and information management. There is that flip side I mentioned earlier around the kind of the move to the less paper office, but also the increase in digitisation. And those two really can coexist. And it's really an opportunity for traditional partners to develop the skills to offer these type of digital workflow solutions to their customers. So other than the commodity of MPS, which has become very commoditized, there's very little to differentiate in the market from one vendor to another. So the real value is adding business process automation, digital workflow integration, and professional services around that. So I'll come back to a bit more on that in my recommendations at the end. So we asked respondents in this survey, where they expect future interest to be as a result of the increase in remote working. So unsurprisingly, collaboration services. The jury really is out on how profitable these could be for the industry, because obviously with everyone using Zoom, Teams, and so on, they are free services, but there's opportunities for perhaps more integrated video conferencing and interactive solutions between the office and the home. So there are some vendors that do have these specific services, specific to video conferencing, and that's really the majority saw the opportunity. Interestingly, almost 70% saw the provisioning of printers for home working as a opportunity. Absolutely more people will be printing from home. We've got a separate study on this, which I won't be presenting today, but we are seeing that although print volumes obviously have flattened to being eliminated completely in the office, people are printing in the home. But obviously they don't have the devices with the capabilities and the sophistication of an office MFP. So the print volumes are nowhere near what they would be in the office. And also there are, security concerns around using home printers. So there are opportunities for the channel and, OEMs to develop products and services and solutions which can help home workers stay productive and continue to print. But the typical devices they're using at the moment, at least in the US and Europe, tend to be ones they bought online, they already own, and they wouldn't be the most secure, and they wouldn't necessarily be the most reliable or cost efficient. So there are some opportunities there to articulate a proposition where those devices can be used in the home, and also printing is able to be tracked by the employer. So that is something that ISVs can really offer solutions for around print management. So I won't go into detail there, but if you'll get a copy of this slide deck so you can see that in more detail if you need to. So now the next slide is moving on to the post-COVID workplace. So I'm going to cover here the results of another study we published, just to give you an insight into what IT decision makers are doing already. So the next slide. We asked organisations, firstly, what is the workforce going to be like? So, as we've seen, it's going to become more decentralised. More people are going to be working in remotely, as well as the office. And we can see here that we conducted this in the UK and the US, and it was pretty much the same. Currently, or prior to COVID, it was around 39%, rising to 48%. When people return to the office, and it could be even more depending on the region, but absolutely remote working will be increasing. In terms of office print volumes, we asked organisations compared to how much they were printing in the office before COVID-19 how much do they expect their print volumes to change when offices reopen? So you can see that there is an expectation from IT decision makers that office print volumes will bounce back. You can see quite a big difference between the UK and the US. 40% of respondents expect to see an increase in print volumes post-pandemic, and the US are more bullish about this, with 45% expecting this against 30% in the UK. However, we think this could be a temporary spike because many of the reasons that they gave for this significant increase was that they need to get back all cylinders firing when they get back to business, they get back to the office. They need to print more documents that they've not been able to while working from home. And also they need to catch up on work they've been doing previously. So a lot of it could be temporary, but we're running the survey again to see how that plays out. And I do believe when offices do reopen, although people haven't been printing at home and maybe more accustomed to working digitally, for example, using 2 screens, using PDFs and managing to review documents online, once they return to the office and they have the access to almost printing, which is almost a free resource, or the perception it's a free resource in an office environment compared to in a home environment where you're more conscious about what you're printing. And I think that will contribute to a bounce back of print volumes following the return to the office, as and when that happens. A few notes on security. 83% of respondents say that their IT department is very concerned about the home print security, much higher in the US than in the UK. And one of the reasons for this, we believe the US tends to be always scoring various criteria a lot higher than the UK, which is more conservative. But actually, the US is also more likely to provide authorized printers to their employees than in the UK. So there's a potential for more awareness around the print security issue than the UK, which are probably less concerned because they're not allowing their employees to do that. But having said that, you obviously have a shadow printing that's happening in the home. So that's something that's very difficult to control. And this is why this is something that I really wanted to highlight around the security aspect of the hybrid workplace, the home and the office environment. Quite a busy slide, so you can have a look at this in more detail if you need to, but it was really how different measures have been implemented in different regions. So I just want to highlight a couple of things. So as I mentioned there, providing approved printers or MFPs to selected remote workers, almost 60% in the US compared to 36% in the UK. Implementing content security or digital rights management. So this is really just the way of organisations controlling what's being printed before it even reaches the printer. So you have content security or data loss prevention tools when actually it will tag certain data in an application and ensure that those documents don't actually get printed at all, or it may make sure that those documents, if they are printed, certain information is blacked out. So there are other ways to control the security of those documents rather than just at the printer, actually at the application level. And again, this is more commonly considered in the US than in the UK. If I just draw your attention to the bottom one around replacing centralized A3 MFPs with A4 distributed models, again, slightly more popular in the US than the UK, but we do see as organizations potentially start reducing at lower capacity than they were before, operating more satellite offices, the need to actually manage a more distributed print environment, meaning more distributed workforce, gives rise to the need for distributed models for using A4 rather than A3 centralized MFPs. So again, it's still early days to see how this plays out, but this is a real opportunity for the industry to consider how MPS contracts can be enhanced and revisited to actually come up with a slightly different balanced deployment model that may have been the case prior to COVID. So just to summarise, the opportunities in the new normal, firstly, the hybrid workplace. So as I mentioned, the opportunity to offer integrated home and office print service solutions, touchless technology. So this is, the authenticating at an MFP without the need to actually touch the device. Obviously, we're going to see a lot more touchless technology emerge in the office workplace because of the need to minimise contact. with devices, and full printing is ideal for that. So we believe that that will actually create some momentum for organisations who have not actually deployed that so far. Cloud collaboration I've already discussed. So, absolutely the need for the hybrid remote workplace is supported by cloud, and we believe that this is a real opportunity for manufacturers, MPS providers, ISVs to develop robust cloud print management tools that integrate with the best of breed out there. So, AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, and so on. That's a huge opportunity, and it does come with a different revenue model than the standard on-premise traditional print infrastructure. But that is where IT consumption is going, and the print industry really needs to jump aboard that sooner rather than later. Because if you don't have a proposition around cloud, most IT decision makers will not even entertain a supplier without a cloud offering. Zero trust security, that's another topic. I won't go into detail here, but because of the expanded threat landscape, because of more endpoints being connected in the remote workplace, there's increasing need to protect an organisation wherever their employees are from cyber attacks. And zero trust security is very much about protecting the identity of a device, regardless of its location or regardless of the actual device. We published a report on that, so if anyone wants to download that, that's on the quocirca.com website. And finally, artificial intelligence. There's opportunities beyond print around business process automation, analytics, even workspace monitoring. Again, we discussed this in a bit more detail, but artificial intelligence and machine learning are absolutely the future of the IT industry, and how you actually use this technology, whether it's for security threat monitoring, analysing what's being printed, and understanding how your customers are using your devices to develop new products and services and solutions. AI is absolutely the future for innovative businesses. So just in summary, I just want to finish with some recommendations. So, absolutely, we believe the industry should capitalise on the acceleration of cloud services and digital transformation. Look at expanding services beyond the printed page, as I mentioned. Look at how you can develop services for cloud, collaboration, digital workflow to integrate these distributed workforces across the hybrid office and home environment. Look at developing integrated home and office print security proposition. Some vendors, some print manufacturers have a very broad and scalable product portfolio, which covers the range from home to small office, home office, right to production. And perhaps those manufacturers will be best positioned to succeed because they do have a portfolio which suits the needs of every type of worker. So it's very much about capitalising on that opportunity for channel partners to expand their portfolio of devices so they can address these requirements. Reposition IT services expertise and trusted partner status. So as I mentioned before, we are seeing that IT services providers becoming more influential, having capabilities around software expertise, cloud and security. Either develop that in-house or partner with partners that already have these capabilities rather than reinventing the wheel. And there's lots of ISVs and channel partners outside of the traditional print industry which can actually add value. And it's really up to the more innovative leading MPS providers and channel partners to really exploit that opportunity to build that IT services expertise. And ultimately, it's all about helping customers be resilient to the next crisis. When further, if this does, it's very likely to happen again in some shape or form, and ensuring that customers have the print infrastructure in place and the scalability and the adaptability so that they are able to support their workers to remain productive with the right tools, whether they're digital tools or print-related tools, to ensure that they remain productive in a similar situation in the future. So the next slide, just to summarise, we've seen that the print industry is at a major inflection point, even prior to COVID. Print volumes were flat to declining, digital disruption was already impacting the industry, and business as usual is still very much elusive and unknown. Industry players, we do believe, have to reposition and rethink their strategy. Clearly, some manufacturers are already doing this better than others. And ultimately, it really does require a startup mentality. I mentioned the metaphor about the oil tankers and the speedboats, and it's a very well used metaphor, but it's absolutely very relevant to the print industry. Is that these big legacy OEMs really need to develop a startup culture within their business so that they can drive innovation not only on the product technology but also on their services and business models. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention. If you do want any information on Quocirca reports, please do look at quocirca.com or print2025.com, where we've got a range of free information as well as pay-to-view information, infographics and videos. And if you have any questions, please do contact me directly.